I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to tell you how to complete any software project on time, on budget, without sacrificing quality. And at first glance, it's going to seem almost trivial. But in reality, it's actually deeply profound. It is extremely simple and extremely hard to do. But let's get into it. Hello, I am Shane Brinkman Davis Delamore, and this is Code and Optimism, a show where we explore how to solve problems faster with software. Today, we're going to take another angle on the question of how do you deliver successful software projects on a budget. So I want to start at the top with the iron triangle fallacy. It's an old concept in engineering, the iron triangle, and it goes a little bit something like this. You can have your project on time, you can have it on budget, or you can have it with quality. Choose two. You can have two of the three. And whereas I think that perhaps applies more to physical engineering projects, with software projects, I think it's not a very good way of thinking about the problem. For starters, time and budget are mostly interchangeable. Of course, we know they're not strictly interchangeable. There are limits, but it's mostly total dev hours is going to be the dominant aspect of any project. And whether or not you shorten the wall clock or not really depends on if you've got enough qualified engineers and you've got a way to scale them up effectively. There's only so much you can shorten the time by adding engineers, but you can do it to some extent. And quality, and this is perhaps true with all engineering, but it's definitely true with software, that quality is actually not a variable, it is a requirement. There is a minimum requirement that a particular project needs in order to succeed, and different projects need different levels of quality, but there's a level of quality that is the bare bones basic required to be successful, and you just have to achieve it. It's kind of fixed. So I find the iron triangle to not be useful. It doesn't help you make decisions. It doesn't even help you think about trade-offs. And here's why. It's missing a key component. In reality, what drives us to have run over budget, to run over time, or even to have quality issues is scope creep. So now we're going to talk about the three things. We're going to talk about what the secret is. We're going to talk about how you implement it. And we're going to talk about a surprising bonus feature of this whole concept. So here's the secret. How to solve any project on time, on budget, with quality. You just got to cut features. That's it. Like I said, it is kind of trivially simple. And it is logically true. It's inarguably true, right? So if we cut the features down to 0, you're done right now. You've shipped successfully. You have all of your features implemented with 100% quality, done. And obviously, if you have one tiny feature, like it adds the numbers 2 plus 2 and prints it out on 4, prints out the number 4. If that is your one feature, you can implement that in 5 minutes and you've got a quality product, right? So obviously, the scaling of the features is what causes all the other problems. Now, you can't just take any arbitrary project with any arbitrary budget and expect to ship it successfully with this rule because of the caveat, there is some set of features that you will need to have in order to have your product go out in the world and have impact. We're going to get to that a little bit more because there are some fallacies around that. But broad strokes, for a given project, there probably is some ballpark budget you need. And so if you don't have the ballpark budget for what your project's impact needs to achieve, that will ultimately be a problem. But if your project's in the ballpark, order of magnitude estimate. I like to think of powers of 2 like so many of us do. So is it 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, 400,000, 800,000, 1.6 million? What order of magnitude is your project's scale? And if it's in the ballpark, probably rounded up, then you can manage the project to success if you manage your features, if you cut features along the way. So that's the secret. But how do you actually apply this? So the key thing when you're applying this is the concept that there's no such thing as a sacred feature. And this is what I've seen time and time again on projects is the exact opposite happens. people think that every feature is sacred. Every feature is a must-have feature. It just goes on and on in terms of the business believing all these features have to be in there, otherwise it won't succeed. It seems to be a very human thing to do, to imagine all these things are necessary, but actually quite the opposite is true. And it's perhaps a bit of the nature of software and our ability to release things in small increments. In order for a project to be successful, all it really needs to do is to create net positive value for the customer. When the customer gets access to our software, whether they're purchasing it or it's ad-based or whatever it is, they get access to our software, there's some cost around that, and they learn it and learn how to use it, there's some cost around that, and then they get some value out of it. If that value they get out of it, minus all those costs, is net better than where they were before, we've succeeded. We will attract customers. People will want to use it because it net benefits them. And we can do that with a fairly small increment. It doesn't have to be a huge increment, partially because software can be deployed to so many people. So each individual can have a small increment. It's worth it to them because it benefits them. And we can capture a small amount of value with every user across 1 million users, and that can be sufficient to pay for development. So we can target small increments. We don't have to make something that is enormous in order to move forward. In broad strokes, what I'm saying here is cut features. I think that features are often the wrong way to talk about software, and that's probably a whole nother episode to dive into a little bit, but I really want you to be thinking about capabilities. Think about the impact you're having on the customer, not the features, like what's the wheels and the text and the widgets and the special tech that you put in your product to achieve that. Those are features, but features don't matter. They don't matter. What matters is, does it actually solve the customer's problem? So that's the how. Look for an incremental net value you can deliver to the customer. Find a problem that is a good problem to solve and a strategy for solving that problem that works within your budget. And all you got to do is get to that net positive return for the customers, and you're off to the races. Stop thinking about sacred features. Get your whole team to let go of sacred features. There's no must-have features. That should be a mantra of every team. Now, you will eventually find features that you think that this feature is so powerful, like this is what we got to have in the product. We really think that's super important. And maybe that powerfulness of that makes it worthwhile. Maybe you can figure out a way to fit in your budget. Maybe it's worthwhile trying to figure out how to stretch your budget to get that in there. But even that feature is not a must-have feature. There is another path where you can deliver net value to the customer. Because remember, at the end of the day, all software is doing is automating something that we could have done manually. Your customer's already doing these tasks manually. All you gotta do is help them do it a little faster, and you've created value for them. Lastly, think capabilities, not features. Features are not what matters. Capabilities are what matters. How are we helping them out? So the last of the 3 big things today is kind of fun. Removing features does feel like a sacrifice. Like, we got to make it fit within the budget. We're going to cut these features. We love them. They're great, but they're not essential. We can still deliver net positive value on the current budget, and that'll get us across the line, get us deployed, get us to success, which will get us the ability to fund the next round of investment in this software. Either it's through user fees or whatever it is. But it always feels like pain removing these features, right? It's always a struggle. Every feature is someone's favorite feature. But here's the little secret, perhaps the biggest secret. The secret even bigger than just remove features is that most products get better the more features you remove. Let me say that again. Most products get better by removing features. This is the hardest thing to overcome. The hardest thing to think about. It's even hard for me, and I've been thinking about this pattern for 20 years. Features have cost. Yes, a feature provides some benefit. It gives capabilities. It automates some workflow to some extent that a user would be doing manually otherwise, but it also brings with it cost. It takes time to learn it. It adds complexity to the UI. It takes away from focusing on other features that might have better value. And it also makes our code more complicated and therefore harder to get right, harder to get bug-free, harder to hit our quality. Features have cost, and not just development cost, they've got direct cost to the user. So in fact, the product gets better by removing auxiliary features so that you can focus on the core use case and making the core use case that much better. if you can get that core use case just a little bit better, the fact that 90% of the time, all your users are doing is that core use case, all your other auxiliary features get used maybe 1% of the time, taking some of those 1% features and giving them the axe so that you can make that 90% plus use case 10% better has a net better impact across all of your users than that little side feature did. It allows you to focus, and focus is just key, right? It allows you to focus on that really essentially powerful thing you're doing that has the most bang for the buck, that really, really delivers value to the customer, rather than all these little side things around the edges. And those little side things, there is a customer for each one that loves it, and that is the best thing in the world, and that's the thing that they want to have most. But for your 10 features and the 10 people who care about those other 9 features, you've got 1,000 people who care about that number 1 feature. That's what matters. And for all of them, removing all those extraneous features allows you, that main feature, to have a better experience. It's got less distractions, it's more tuned just for that feature, and it doesn't have to have all these other things getting in the way. So, to recap, the number 1 secret is here. You can deliver any project on time, on budget, without sacrificing quality. You just have to cut features. Your budget has to be in the ballpark, and that's something you have to assess as quickly as you can and reassess as often as you can to make sure that your project can succeed because your budget is in the ballpark. But if you start with a reasonable budget that's reasonably sized for what you're trying to do, you can manage to the budget and succeed. But all features, and this is the how part, are on the cutting table all the time. There's no such thing as a sacred feature. There's no must-have features. There is never a must-have feature. All features are negotiable. What matters is the capabilities. What capabilities are you delivering to the customer? And they just have to be net incremental. That's all you have to do in order to succeed. Last, reducing features, not only often, but I would say most of the time, makes your product better. In fact, it's really, really hard to remove features. It's really, really hard to figure out how can I make all the way down to just 1 or 2 features that can actually still accomplish this meaningful goal for users. It's a difficult thing to do, but when you do it, not only does it pull your budget up, but it also allows you to make a much better product. So I want to hear what you have to say about all this. What's your experience with projects where feature creep has run you over budget, over time, caused the project to fail? I do think that's probably the single biggest reason projects fail. And we've been talking in previous episodes about failure to generate knowledge on projects and the ways that projects fail. But pretty much this is it. This is the big one. Often engineering doesn't fail. We might go down some blind alleys. We might not have enough knowledge, but we will eventually get there. But the problem is we've got too much scope and we don't have enough time to get all the scope done before we run out of budget. And that scope is these features. Also, I would like to hear your thoughts about minimalist products. I admit that I am a minimalist, so I have a bias towards minimalist products. I want a product that's really focused. The more focused, the better. The less auxiliary features, the better. But trying as best I can to set aside my personal preferences, I really do think it makes the product better for the reasons I've discussed. So let me know in the comments. I respond to every comment. I want to have a conversation with you. I want to hear your feedback. And I appreciate your support of this channel. I would appreciate some likes and some subscribes. That helps YouTube promote this content to other people if you think this is useful. And with that, I will once again thank you for spending your valuable time with me. And remember, all problems are solvable with enough knowledge.